Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Kraig Bowers, and we are joined by special guest, Braden Bowers, here to preview Purdue versus Wisconsin. That is Saturday, February 15th, a 1 p.m. Eastern time tip on CBS. Getting one of kind of the marquee games, and honestly, one of the probably four best Big Ten games of the week. And Purdue's already played in one of those this week, is I would say. But we're here to preview everything that you need to know for Purdue's bounce back game against Wisconsin. Kraig, I'll throw it to you, just kind of your initial thoughts and all of that leading into this matchup.
Yeah, the game got a lot bigger, didn't it? We talked about when we did like the rest of the Big Ten season preview of what was coming down the stretch and what teams had to do to win the Big Ten conference. We talked about that next 3-game stretch that if Purdue was going to try to win the conference outright, they probably needed to go 2-1. They lose their first one in that 3-game series, so this game has even more meaning than maybe it did a couple of days ago for sure. As we look at this matchup just in general, right, these are games that are always close. Purdue has won the last 3 regular season meetings, but back in 21-22, the year when I believe Wisconsin ends up winning the Big Ten, right, when beating us at home, I believe that year. They sweep us that year in the matchup, so game that's always close. This is a good metric game for Purdue. It's still going to be a quad 1, actually a quad 1A game at home because Wisconsin comes in ranked 16th in the net. They are currently ranked 12th in KenPom, 9th in offense, and 37th on defense. A team that's a real good shooting team in terms of being 54.8 for an effective field goal percentage, or pretty good shooting team. They do well from the 3-point line at 36.5%. Shoot twos at a fairly high clip at 55%. Probably one of their most impressive things is they rank number 1 in the country in free throw percentage at 84.1% per game. A team that doesn't turn the ball over much. We've talked a lot about how Purdue defensively has really come in and stepped up their game in terms of forcing a lot of turnovers. This is a Wisconsin team that doesn't turn it over much, only 14.6% turnover rate, which is good for 26 in the country. And if you haven't watched Wisconsin this year, definitely a team that has stepped up in terms of pace and in scoring as well. This is an exciting show for me because Braden's on, who's, as we talk about college basketball in general, we share a love for college basketball. Unfortunately, I was not able to instill the love for Purdue basketball as he lives in Wisconsin and is a big Wisconsin Badgers fan. So we're excited to bring him on the show to talk a little bit about Wisconsin. Braden, as you look at Wisconsin this year, a team that came in ranked by a lot of people to finish in the bottom 4 or 5 in the Big Ten. They've obviously had a much different season than that. Just what's your thoughts on Wisconsin's season so far?
The Badgers have been a surprising team this year. We've beaten everyone that we're supposed to. We got quad 1 wins. Not very tough ones, though, except Arizona early on in the season. Looking forward to this game. It'll be a big one for Wisconsin to win.
Yeah, and if they can pull it off, obviously it's a big one on their resume. Like you said, Arizona real early in the season's kind of their one top 25 win that's floating around out there. But they do have 6 quad 1 wins, just haven't necessarily knocked anybody off that's really on that top tier flight other than Arizona. Joe, as we talk kind of high level, as we always do, I guess, what do you expect to see Wisconsin do offensively? What is this team in terms of how they're operating this year differently and scoring so much at such a higher clip than the last few years?
Yeah, I think you started to see a bit of it last year where they took this jump and right they run this kind of continuity ball screen type offense where they just kind of swing the ball from side to side. They run 5 out a lot, and they're just kind of looking for their spots. And, okay, I'm going to drive. Okay, I'm going to kick. Most lineups include 5 shooters on the floor. I think Gilmore is the one guy that you would argue maybe isn't, but even he's shooting 44% from 3 on this year. Career 27, so probably somewhere in the middle. But just really good space. Like, they do such a good job of spacing the floor that it allows their guys, Tanjay and Blackwell, to just drive and get downhill. And Tanjay's like a top 3 scorer. Like, I don't know about points per game, but like just physically the ability to score, probably a top 3 scorer in the Big Ten, the best player on Wisconsin, in my opinion, and the most important to what they want to do. And like Tanjay's probably a first team all Big Ten dude. I think he's one of probably my locks at this point. So just scored all 3 levels, can get to the free throw line. You mentioned the free throw shooting. They aren't just like number 1 this year. They are number 1 in the history of college basketball if the season ended today. Nobody has shot better from the free throw line than they have as a team. Obviously, there's still a couple games, so like in theory could drop. But yeah, they have spacing. Like Crowell and Winter can still get their post ups, but lots of spacing and just lots of ability to then drive and get downhill. And then they got shooters everywhere if they spray out.
Yeah. And then from a defensive standpoint, kind of talked about as I opened just how little Wisconsin turns the ball over, but they don't force a lot of turnovers either. So what do you expect to see Wisconsin do just from their principles relative to Purdue defensively in this matchup?
Yeah, I honestly think this is going to be a fun matchup. I think I think it can quickly turn into a shootout because I think both teams, right, are more offensive dominant. I also think both offenses are kind of built to beat the other team's defense. And so with Wisconsin's defense, they play, I don't know if conservatively is the right answer, but I'll say conservatively, right, where they are a team, you look at their numbers, they aren't going to win the possession battle, but they also aren't going to lose it. They're basically just betting on like, hey, we can make more shots than you. And defensively, they want to force teams into mid-range shots. They have one of the highest defensive mid-range rates. They are, where is it? Yeah, 300. So they're 4th highest mid-range defensive rate in the country. They force teams to take mid-range shots. They are going to live with them. We watch Purdue. You got two or three of the best mid-range shooters. I know TKR isn't necessarily a shooter, but mid-range scorers in the country, like just truthfully. So you'll see some deep drop coverage from them. You'll also see them mix in high hedges, like they will do both. But even the hedges are more of just like hey, I'm going to try to push the ball handler back a half step and recover, not hey, I'm like blitzing you to try to force turnovers. Just kind of all right, let my guy get through and then we get back. You live with mid-range jumpers. They want to take away shots at the rim, one of the best defensive rim rates in the country. So not like crazy aggressive, but it has been improving some. I think early in the season especially was the biggest knock, but it's been improved some, I would say, over especially the Big Ten play. Like this wouldn't what Braden and TKR took like 42s combined against Michigan, and I wouldn't be shocked if that happens once again.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess other thing that maybe comes out too about Wisconsin, not the best offensive rebounding team in the country, actually ranked 232nd in the country. That surprised me a little bit given some of the bigs that they have. But that's one thing we worried about all year with this Purdue team is teams that can really rebound the ball on the offensive end of the floor. So maybe not quite as big of concern in this game from that standpoint. Let's dive into some of the players. As always, we'll start with the guard in the wing room. I know you said Tanjay is their best player. I've got this spot for Blackwell in my heart, watching him play just because of the fact that he does everything on the court at such a high level. So point guard for Wisconsin, John Blackwell, a 6'4" sophomore. Shooting guard, you've got Max Klesmet, a 6'3" senior, and then at small forward, the aforementioned John Tanjay, senior at 6'5" as well for this team that makes a formidable backcourt for anybody to have to stop. Braden, just any thoughts you have on those three guys and what they do for Wisconsin?
Starting with Blackwell, he kind of just does everything. I'd say he's first team Big Ten probably. If not, he's got to be for sure second Big Ten. He's real good defender. He's real good rebounding, and then he scores on all 3 levels from behind the arc, driving, and mid-range. And then you got Klesman at the shooting guard. He's not having the best year this year, but he's kind of turned into the leader of Wisconsin, and I think this could be his year, or this could be his game. He shows up at big moments and big games, but I think this could be his game. Then you have Tanjay, the graduate senior transfer out of Missouri. Yeah, he's real streaky, real good. Don't miss from the free throw line much, and he can get hot quick, but he can also be real cold.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, so I will say I'm also a huge John Blackwell fan. Like, when I watched this film coming into freshman year, I was like, yeah, this dude's good. I say Tanjay a little bit better just because I think probably about the same defender. Blackwell facilitates a little bit more, and Tanjay's just the better scorer right now. But they're both really, really good, and I'm concerned how Purdue guards both of them because Purdue only has generally one of CJ or Jakari or Miles on the floor, which means one of Braden or Fletch probably has to take one of Blackwell or Tanjay, unless Purdue gets really weird, which we'll talk about later maybe. But yeah, I think Braden hit on a lot of the points. Like Blackwell and Tanjay, honestly, they do a lot of similar things. They can score from all three levels. Good three-point shooters. Tanjay will shoot it from anywhere, can knock it down from anywhere. Tanjay's a super physical driver where he can get to the line. Free throw rate has dropped a bit in Big Ten play, but also he had a game against Arizona where he himself went 21 of 22 from the free throw line. Just such a crafty finisher around the rim, and then also has a good three-point shot to go with it. Blackwell's kind of in the similar spot where, like, really, he can get downhill. He can get all the way to the rim. He shot the ball well from three throughout his, 2 seasons now. And they're just both dudes you just have to be aware of. And I think as we get into, like, if we talk about some things Purdue has to be kind of wary of is with their continuity ball screen offense, Blackwell and Tanjay love to just rip and drive baseline, where they just refuse the screen and just go. Now, Purdue generally wants to force those guys baseline where their help's going to be. And I think a big thing that I'm going to watch for in this game is where exactly is the help located and how does it get there? Because Wisconsin, 5 spacing, they have 5 shooters on the floor most of the time. If you got 5 dudes on the perimeter, it's a little tougher to then rotate and help baseline because you're going to be a little bit further out of position. So that's a big thing I'm going to be watching with those two specifically. Is just like when they rip and go baseline, what does Purdue kind of do? Does Purdue even force them there? And then Klesmitz hasn't shot the ball well this year, but like I don't want to, like, if I'm Purdue, I don't want to give him an open look because, like Brain said, this could just be a game where he just goes 4 of 6 or something like that from 3. Like that is absolutely within his repertoire. He's been improved as a facilitator, I think, this year too, and being a little bit more all-around type player. So, 28.7% from 3 this season, but he's a career 35% on almost 700 attempts. So, still don't want to let him get good looks.
Yeah, and he's just tough to me. Like he's a tough kid. He's a tough basketball player out there that is high IQ and makes the right plays most of the time. I was interested because kind of earlier in the Big Ten season, there was some talk about, is the scoring really going to translate for Tanjay because it dipped right at the beginning of Big Ten season. So I sorted for conference games only, and that average has come up since then, and it's actually not too far off. So I think any question marks about that maybe are dispelled. His scoring seems to come in bunches to me. Like he'll get hot and score a bunch, and then he'll go quiet, and then he'll get hot again at times. But that's going to be a real interesting matchup. And yeah, we'll talk more later, I guess, maybe about who we think Purdue will have guarding him. That's going to be a tough matchup for Purdue. As we move to the big room, 2 guys that are certainly plenty effective. And I think coming into this season, probably people from the outside looking at Wisconsin's program assumed they were going to have to be a bigger factor in terms of the percentage of points scored on this team for Wisconsin to be really successful. But Nolan Winter comes in as a sophomore forward at 6'11", that's shooting a nice clip from outside. And then Steven Krause, a 7-foot center. Braden, what stands out to you about the 2 big men for Wisconsin?
Yeah, Nolan Winter's really changed this year. Last year, I wasn't too big of a fan of him. My mom's still not a big fan of him, but he's changed a bunch, and he's still able to knock down the 3 from behind the arc, and he's put some muscle on and been able to body down low a little bit. And then Steven Krause, I've had high hopes for him coming into the season. He disappointed me a little bit, but he's also like Klesmit, kind of turned into the leader of it and just takes what he can get.
Yeah, I think, right, like Steven Krause just is who he is at this point. He is a stretch 5 that can knock down a 3, can protect the rim a little bit, can get to the post up some, but he's also a good passer, and he's a big part of what allows this offense to kind of be what they are, where you do have to respect him out on the 3-point line enough. He's also a good passer. He'll be involved in a lot of handoffs and a lot of screening and rolls and things like that. And then Winter's just been effective everywhere. He can stretch and knock down threes. He's done a lot better of converting at the rims, especially kind of like on those rolls and things like that. Also could, like, depending on the matchup, can kind of take some slower guys off the bounce a little bit to the rim. Right. They're just solid. And that's probably a good way to describe this Wisconsin team. Just solid. Like, there's things you can nitpick for sure, but there's also just so many good qualities that's just like, yeah, they're just good players and can kind of do a bit of everything. And Winter will play those 5 at times too when they rotate. And he's also like, the block percentage isn't great, but they do a good job as a defense of deterring shots at the rim.
All right. And shooting 70% on twos for the season coming into this game as well. So certainly highly effective down in that area. And I don't know, Kraug's like one of those guys that every year you think like he was going to make a bigger jump at some point than he did. But nonetheless, certainly a really effective center that would start for it a lot of places in the Big Ten. I'm sure there's some teams in Michigan that would take him, or well, one team in Michigan that would take him. As we kind of turn to the bench a little bit, looking at who's there, I guess, Braden, I'm just going to turn it over to you. And who on that bench for Wisconsin just kind of stands out to you as being major contributors?
Yeah, Kamar McGee, the guard, the backup point guard, and he'll run the 2 sometimes. He's a senior, 6 foot. He's a transfer from Green Bay a couple years ago, and he's shooting lights out from outside. He's 55% from 3. And he's averaging 7.2 points per game. Good defender, and he's a hustler. He'll get on the floor and he'll make some big plays and big steals. I think he could have a big game. I think Purdue could forget about him and focus on Blackwell and Tanjay. And usually, what happens to McGee, he gets left open in the corner and just knocks him down. And then Carter Gilmore, He's really made some improvements this year. I was not a big fan of him at all coming into the season. And he's forward, senior, 6'7", averaging 3.6 points a game. And he don't shoot a lot, but when he does, he makes them. He makes them a lot.
Yeah, I think starting with McGee, like, his shooting this year needs to be studied because – coming into the season, he did not shoot above 28% from 3 in any season. Granted, not super high volume. And now he's basically doubled that. He's doubled his career and career percentage coming into the game or into the season is shooting 55%. 58.8% from 3 in conference play. Like Brain said, he's oftentimes like his shots will just be catch and shoot looks in the corner where he's wide open a good bit and he's shooting really just kind of an insane rate from the corners. He's 9 of 15 from the corners, 11 from 19, kind of up closer to the top of the key. But also just a physical guard, kind of like Drew Thelwell in Iowa, a little bit of like, you don't look at him and like anything really, really stands out, but he hustles, good hands defensively, can facilitate, and then knock down shots. And then Gilmore, like I think for Purdue fans, this probably is a good summary. So KenPom, if you go on KenPom player pages, they have players that they're most similar to throughout KenPom's database. Carter Gilmore this year, the player he is most like is Grady Eifert senior year. And I think that's a pretty good comp where he's knocking down threes. He's more of a glue guy, can pass a little bit. Not going to be super high usage, but will be efficient in the shots that he does take. And then, I think he's a solid defender. He's interesting. I'm interested to see what they do because he's 44% from 3 on the year. He's still 27% from his career. And like, if there was a guy that you were going to help off of, I could see Purdue just leaving him. And if he beats him from 3, he beats him from 3. But we'll see. I don't know for sure if they'll do that or not. The other 2 guys off the bench just quickly mentioned Xavier Amos and Jack Janicki, both more role players. Amos, I thought was going to be much better this year than what he has. In theory, he's a stretch 4 with good rim protecting chops. Hasn't really fully translated yet, but I'll be watching for him next year. And then Janicki is a walk-on freshman that just kind of like plays his role. He hasn't shot the ball fantastic, but can shoot. More of a hustler, more of a glue guy, but Don't expect gigantic minutes from either of them, but they'll probably still get anywhere from 4 to 10.
Yeah. Good summary of all the players there on the Wisconsin team that are probably going to see on the floor in Mackey coming up this weekend. To your point about McGee, Braden, and Joe both in terms of defender, averaging almost a steal a game coming off the bench. So obviously has some defensive chops on that end as well. Braden, I'm going to actually throw this to you first. As you look at this Wisconsin team matching up against Purdue, where do you think they have a chance to exploit Purdue's defense and score on Wisconsin's offensive end?
Like Joe mentioned, Tanja's, he's going to be a big problem for Purdue, I think. And then all the help's going to have to go to him, and will open a lot of space for Klesmit. And I think Klesmit could really change the game, taking him outside the three-point arc and then just leaving everything else open for everybody else and Blackwell getting started. But I think the main problem will be John Tonje.
Yeah, and to you on that point, Joe, we've already alluded to this a couple of times in this show, but I guess how do you expect Purdue to try to match up against this Wisconsin team? And I think obviously the focal point is probably Tonje.
Yeah, I mean, right. I think based on past history, I expect CJ to probably take Tonje, which means Braden's probably on Blackwell, but I don't know. Or they might flip. I don't know. Like, that's where it's tough, where I think this could be a Jakari plus CJ game at times where you just kind of have to match them both up, allow Braden to roam off of Klesmit a bit, and then just rotate from there. I think if Purdue wanted, and I don't know if I actually think they should, if Purdue wanted, they could get weird with matchups where you throw first on Tonje, CJ on Blackwell, Braden on Klesmit, and you put Fletch on Nolan Winter. Now, obviously, Nolan Winter has 7-8 inches taller than Lawyer. What you're doing there is if there's a post up, you are just doubling like they do anyways. Now you're going to be probably switching a lot anyway, so maybe it just doesn't matter quite as much. And then TKR obviously on Crowell in that scenario, but I think that they could get weird in that sense where I think this is going to have first is going to be important unless Jakari and CJ both play together. And then those two can take Tonje and Blackwell, and you're still going to force baseline. You're still going to rotate and help. Wisconsin's a team that shoots a lot of threes, though. So, got to be able to rotate out. It's a really, really tough matchup for Purdue defensively.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see, too, just, we've seen some games where Miles has gotten a lot of run for what Purdue needs defensively at times, and just with Tanje's added size over Jakari and over CJ. And I know he's listed at 6'5", or at least on Sports Reference he is, but man, he seems bigger than that to me. I don't know. Maybe he's not, but he just seems bigger than that to me. So I'll be interested to see how Miles matches up when he does get minutes in there, because I assume he'll be on him when he is. And if he has a good run on him, if he kind of gets some extended play in this specific game. To flip that then, Joe, on the offensive end for Purdue, obviously they're going to run a ton of pick and roll, but I guess where do you see matchups that they can exploit and Wisconsin may have trouble with Purdue?
Yeah, I think it's going to start with obviously Braden and pick and roll and getting downhill. I think Wisconsin, I don't trust any of their defenders individually, maybe aside from Klesmit. But I think as a team, they do a really good job. And so there could be spots again where Braden just kind of ISOs who you'll get. I mean, if Gilmore's in the game, he'll try to get Gilmore to switch on him. If not, probably Winter would be probably my best guess, and try to get the switch and just ISO and attack. But aside from that, right, it's going to be a lot of Wisconsin's either in a high hedge or they're in a deep drop. That's either way. The high hedge will probably equal a lot of TKR short rolls, where unless Wisconsin sells out on that, he probably should be getting a lot of looks there. If it's big drop coverage, that means it's probably a lot of Braden pull-up twos. Now, if Wisconsin wants to try to take that away, that's where the kickouts can kind of happen. I know that's kind of like a rinse and repeat at this point for Purdue offense, but it is how it is. Wisconsin, I'm trying to remember specifically, but I think they do. They will double the post some, but they haven't a ton this year. And so Maybe you see some TKR stuff just early on just to kind of feel out what they do in that sense. But yeah, I mean, we're in game 20. This would be game 25 for Purdue or 26 for Purdue. It's going to be a lot of Braden Smith and TKR pick and roll.
Yeah, it certainly that's we can pretty much go to that it's going to be a whole lot of that. I think to me it's just always a question of what's open off of that pick and roll. Do we expect them to leave 3-point shooters more, like when we face a team like Nebraska, or is it going to be more of a mid-range game? This feels like more of a mid-range game. This feels like it could be a big Braden Smith scoring game, just based on how they want to defend and if he's getting to that mid-range effectively again and again. As we turn and look at, I guess, maybe some predictions here in terms of what we think might happen. Like we said, it's been the last 3 games. Purdue has beat Wisconsin. But the year before that, Wisconsin won both times. This is going to be a big-time matchup in Mackey Arena. Be Tanjay's first time, I believe, playing in Mackey Arena, unless I'm missing some time that he played there with either the 2 teams he was on before, but I don't think he would have. Obviously, we know the impact that Mackey Arena can have on people, but everybody else has been here, experienced that, right? It's not going to be something brand new to them. So I'm really looking forward to it. Joe, what do you think is going to happen?
I honestly think this is a close game. I also think it's going to be really high scoring. Like, if I'm going to give a score, I think it's like 83 to 80 Purdue. Like, I don't see, unless teams just, like, both teams just miss shots, which can happen. I don't see how either team really stops the other team consistently. But I do think Mackey Arena, you have the best player on the floor. They're just going to, plus coming off a loss, I think it still just gives Purdue the little bit of the edge.
All right. Braden, I think I know where you're going here, but who are you taking in this game?
Well, after seeing the Michigan game, I figured it's a pretty good way to start off the 2-game losing streak and have Wisconsin winning here and having Tanjay and Klesmit having a pretty big game and Blackwell having an all right game.
Okay. I'm going to have to go with Purdue in this one at home. We rarely see Purdue lose back-to-back games. Obviously, they did that with Texas A&M and Auburn. Both of those games were not at Mackey Arena, though. We know games back in Mackey after losses don't tend to go real good for the opposing team most of the time. I do think it'll be a high-scoring game. I think the Wisconsin games are always close, it feels like, so I won't be shocked at all if it is. I don't think we're going to be able to turn Wisconsin over a ton. I think that's where games tend to turn into blowouts, is when Purdue can really force the turnover count up and get out and run and get easy baskets. So I expect a close one, but I expect a Purdue win as well. Braden, thanks for joining us. It was fun to get to do this with you and talk a little Purdue-Wisconsin basketball. Joe, I will let you take it away and tell them where they can watch it and what time it's on.
Yes, so Saturday, February 15th, it's a 1 p.m. Eastern time tip on CBS. We will be live after the game. I assume Braggs will either be at Mackey or be available for the show, but you never know with that guy. If he's available, we'll be live shortly after the final buzzer. If not, it'll probably be a little bit longer after press conferences and that. But like, subscribe, and if you turn on bell notifications, you'll just get a notification as soon as we do go live. And then you don't got to worry about what time we are or aren't, because it'll just pop up on your phone for you. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate Braden coming on and helping with this preview. And we will see you all then after the Purdue-Wisconsin game.